So he wants to come to Western Canada. He's going to be turning 38 here right away. He's got 2 years left on his contract. Like, even if Chicago eats half of his contract and all that, Duncan Keith is slowing down. He's at the end of his career. He's not the Conn Smythe winner from 6 years ago. Do you really think he can play in the Oilers' second pairing? I'm skeptical.
I'm not. He definitely can play in the second pairing. He's 17, 18 minutes a game. Absolutely. It's not like the Oilers have three other younger left defensemen that can take up that spot if Oscar Klefbom can't play. So he played 23 minutes last year. I think his age means nothing. Is Mike Smith, it's the same thing. His age means nothing.
He's 1,200 games into his career.
Who else would you get if it's nice to say, I think he's too old, or I don't think that's a great idea, even if they eat half of it. So who should the Oilers get?
We're currently, the Stanley Cup Finals featuring a Habs team that, blew through the North Division and the Vegas Golden Knights with a punishing defense. Duncan Keith isn't that kind of a defenseman. He's 6'1", 190 pounds. The Oilers have a small defense already. Don't they need to try to get bigger if they're going to add somebody like Jamie Oleksiak?
Difference is they're bidding against 10, 12 other teams for Jamie Oleksiak. It's nice to say they can go and get another free agent defenseman. But I think what the fan in Edmonton has to realize is nobody wants to come to Edmonton. Nobody wants to come to
except
Edmonton.
for Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, who just signed
Yeah, and if you actually get a player that wants to come to Edmonton, as Duncan Keith does, well, then you better try and get him. I think the problem is that in free agency, even though the Oilers have McDavid and Draisaitl, that's not a big enough pull for players. If they can get a team in a state with no income tax, they're going there. And the Oilers,
unless they want to try to play with the best player like Tyson Barrie did last year.
But Jamie Oleksiak's not going to do that. Jamie Oleksiak, this is the one time he's going to be an unrestricted free agent.
You're still wanting to add salary. You're still wanting to add salary when you bring in Duncan Keith in, because if going the other way is like a Caleb Jones or something less than that, that's still more salary you're going to add, even if you're only eating half the contract. Because how much does he make per season?
5.3.
Okay. So you're still adding $2.5 to $3 million to your, assuming Chicago keeps half.
They're just buying. All they're doing is
like signing a free agent.
They're buying time for Philip Broberg and Dmitry Samorukov. That's all they're doing. 2-year contract. I don't think it's a problem. I think the fan in Edmonton is negative on any player who plays in another team that the Oilers are looking at. There's something wrong with him. Why are they going to get him? I think sometimes the Edmonton Oilers fans should just take a step back and say, I suspect that Ken Holland ran this by Connor McDavid before he even thought of it. And Connor McDavid gave it the thumbs up, or he didn't give it the thumbs down. So he's going to try and do it. So I don't have a problem with Duncan Keith for 2 years. If they had somebody else on their roster to step into that role, if Oscar Klefbom can't play, I'd say, why are they going after this guy? But they don't. Even if Oscar came back and played in, say, January, that would give him 3 left shot defensemen, and if you're only paying half the contract for Duncan Keith, that's not the end of the world.
Why would we want him here?
Because he wants to come here, and he's won. I don't think there's enough winning in the Oilers. I don't think there's enough players on the team that know what it takes to win. He's as competitive as a player as I've ever seen in the NHL as long as I've covered it. And he knows how to win. This isn't Milan Lucic coming in with 1 Stanley Cup ring in Boston. And he could point to that, and he was a strong voice in the room. This is a guy with 3 Stanley Cup rings and a Conn Smythe MVP, 2 Olympic golds. I think his resume speaks for itself. And it's not like the bottom's fallen out, Duncan Keith, where he can barely play. It's not the case. His stats were not great last year, in large part because he played with young defensemen, either Ian Mitchell or Boquist, in a mentorship role. I think if he came to the Oilers, he wouldn't be playing with Evan Bouchard. He might eventually. You can teach him a few things in practice. He wouldn't be playing with Evan Bouchard.
I mean, I get it. He has more pedigree than Milan Lucic or Alex Chiasson or Andrew Ference years ago. Certainly more than James Neal, because he's got cup finals experience, but he hasn't won, but he's still a veteran in the room who knows what it takes, how to win.
If used in the right way, he can play.
The Blackhawks have the same cap problems that the Oilers do with some of these contracts. They can't just buy them out. Can't buy everybody out. I mean, that's why the Blackhawks have been in, ever since 2015. That's 6 years ago when they last won the Stanley Cup. And they haven't exactly been a powerhouse since. Just because obviously some of the players that got them there have either aged out or they've moved on because they've had to. I mean, the Blackhawks have been dismantling their team for the last few years.
That is true, but Duncan Keith is no worse than the second best defenseman on the Chicago Blackhawks, even at 38. So,
we're not. Chicago didn't make the playoffs, did they?
No, but we're not.
I'm a skeptic.
We're not.
I am.
I know.
I'm a skeptic.
I know you're a skeptic. Like too many Oiler fans are skeptics, to be honest. They treat Ken Holland like he just fell off the turnip truck here. He knows what he's doing. If he didn't think he could play significant minutes, he's making the deal, and he's not making the deal unless Chicago makes it worth his while. I mean, it's the player who wants out, okay, and the player who's not happy necessarily with his role now in Chicago. So, it behooves Stan Bowman to get some sort of deal. So if he has to eat half of it, he has to eat half of it to get back a young player from the Oilers. And if that's Caleb Jones, so be it. I know there's a large segment of Oiler fans love Caleb Jones. I think he's a third pairing National Hockey League defenseman. No better. So if they're giving up Caleb Jones for 2 years of Duncan Keith, it's not the end of the world. And if they have to toss, if there's some draft picks or there's another prospect, going to Chicago as well, to make the dollars work a little better. This isn't Andrew Ference coming in, who was a, number 4 to 5 defenseman on the Boston Bruins when they won. This is a guy who's still at worst a second pairing defenseman on most NHL teams. And there's no guarantee, Craig, that Seattle will, get him. I mean, Seattle's going to spend to the cap. The ownership has said that. Norm McIver, who used to work for the Blackhawks as the assistant general manager, now works for the Seattle Kraken. I believe Norm is a Duncan Keith fan, so maybe Seattle just makes a deal for him.